the animal spotting guide that's up above your head. Now, I can't guarantee that we'll see all those animals out there on the reserve today, but we do usually have some pretty good luck. Now, we might also get to see some animals that are not up there on the guide as well, so I'll do my best to point those out to you when we do see them. Now, that being said, this is a photo safari, so feel free to take as many photos or videos of the animals as you'd like. I just ask that you hold on to any camera, cell phones, or any other personal belongings pretty tightly because it does get pretty bumpy out here on the reserve. And unfortunately for the safety of the animals, I can't stop to pick anything up if it does fall out of the truck. Wild animals, not professional models. So they might not be stopped at the same time that we are, but we'll definitely do our best. But having that action setting and having those cameras out and ready to go is going to be the best way to get the best picture of the animals and not the best picture of the trees. There it is. There did look like it was pretty clear of trees already, which means there probably is another herd that came through the area not too long ago. So hopefully we can still catch up to them. It's also not too unusual to just see one elephant by itself because the herds are matriarchal societies. So the females and the babies will all stay in one herd together. But as the males get a little bit older, usually around the time they're 12 or 13, that'll be around the time that they leave the herd and go off either on their own, or they may sometimes find other males that they can form a small bachelor herd with. Our road is also going to take us through this red clay pit here, which is usually another pretty good spot to see elephants hanging out. I do have to see some tusk marks and hoof prints in the clay. The elephants do like to pass through that clay pit along their migration path for a couple different reasons. The clay is a source of nutrients for them, so it is something that they can't do in the rain here. Might be a little hard to see, but back behind that bush on the far left-hand side, there is an okapi, I believe. Now, the okapi does actually have some very stylish zebra pants, but they're actually not related to the zebra at all. They're actually the only known relative of the giraffe. We know the okapi and the giraffe are related for a couple different reasons. The first is going to be the shape of their skulls, and the second is actually their tongues. On the left and the right-hand side here, we do also have a pair of saddle-billed stork. Now the saddle-billed stork get their names because of the yellow saddle markings that are up at the tops of their beaks. We can usually see them in pairs as well because we can usually see the saddle-billed stork in pairs because they do mate for life, and we can actually tell the difference between the male and the female in the pair based on the color of their eyes. The male saddle-billed stork will only ever have black eyes, and the females will only ever have yellow eyes. Now over here up on the hill, those are the bongo that we're seeing up there. Now the bongo are known as the ghosts of the forest because they have that really dark brown, almost rust-colored fur. And with the white markings on their sides, that'll actually help them mimic the appearance of sunlight coming through the trees during the day. Now there are also some greater kudu over there on the left-hand side. Now the greater kudu are the second tallest antelope on the reserve. They'll be about 5 feet tall. Those were females that we saw back there because they didn't have horns, only the male will grow horns. Now we are traveling along the Sahi River right now. And over here on the left-hand side, those are actually pink-backed pelican. Now the pink-backed pelican might not look too pink to us right now. That's because they actually get their pink coloring during their mating season. During their mating season, the pink-backed pelicans' backs will start to turn kind of a dusty rose color, giving the appearance that their feathers are turning pink. But it's actually just the skin underneath. Now we are also going to be crossing the river on this bridge up ahead here. And it is really important that everyone remains seated as we do because those are Nile crocodile that we're seeing down there on the left-hand side. And they are one of the animals on the reserve that we definitely don't want to mess with. Fully grown, they'll be about 16 feet long and can weigh up to 500 pounds. And even though they weigh that much, they can eat about half that body weight in a single meal if they needed to. You'll see that one of them does also already have its mouth propped to open. Now the good news is that they don't necessarily do that just because they're hungry. They are cold-blooded animals, so a lot of times when we see their mouths propped open like that, that's actually how they're trying to regulate their body temperature. We still definitely don't want to mess with them though. They are one of the animals that are known for their jaw strength. They can snap their jaws closed with about 2,000 pounds per square inch of pressure. But they can control their jaw strength when they need to as well. For example, when female crocodiles have eggs that are getting ready to hatch, they'll actually roll the eggs around in their mouth to help crack the shell so the babies have an easier time coming out. Now we are on the right-hand side. Now the baobab tree is sometimes referred to as the upside-down tree. Those are actually its branches that we see up there, and they just remain leafless for about 9 months out of the year. Now the baobab does also have that really wide trunk, which is great for storing water for the drought as well. But it does mean that sometimes the animals will come through and eat the bark because they know that they can find water inside. As we come down the hill and onto the savanna, you'll also notice how the landscape out here is shaped by the animals that live on it. Not very many of the trees have low-hanging leaves thanks to giraffe herds that come through and graze on them. A lot of the grass that we're seeing is relatively short as well, thanks to antelope and hoofstock species that come through and graze on the grass. Now, looks like we've got a couple animals coming up over here. Now, there is a den over here on the left-hand side. And it does look like there's a pack of African wild dogs inside. Now, the wild dogs are actually one of the most successful pack hunters on the savannah. Their hunts have about a 90% success rate because they have a really great communication. They can work together really well as a pack. They also have really great endurance and stamina. They can actually chase most of their prey to the point of exhaustion. Now, in addition to being great hunters, even though the wild dogs are overseen by a male and female alpha pair, they are still democratic as well. They will take votes on if they want to go hunting. They can actually vote by sneezing. The more sneezes they get, the more likely they are to go on their hunts. Now, if you keep looking to the left-hand side, those are the sable antelope that we're seeing back there. Now, the sable antelope have those really gorgeous dark brown coats, and their coats do actually get darker as they age and mature. And ultimately, that's how they determine the dominant member of their herd. It will be the male that has the darkest brown coat. Now, the other really big horned animals that we saw over there are going to be the uncooley cattle. Now, their horns are not quite as big and heavy as they might look. They are made up of a honeycomb-like structure inside, so they can still lift up their heads without much of a problem. And we're getting a pretty good view of some baby giraffes over there. Now, the baby giraffes get to be about 6 feet tall when they're first born. Giraffes also weigh about 150 pounds when they're born as well. Now, the wildebeest actually have one of the largest migration patterns in the world. They'll travel between 500 and 1,000 miles during their migration season, and their herds can actually reach about 1.5 million members in them during that time as well. So this is actually a pretty small herd that we're seeing here. There are some more giraffes seeking shelter in the trees up ahead here. Now, the giraffes get pretty tall, about 18 to 20 feet tall, which is one reason that they can graze out of the trees so easily. The other thing that helps them out with their grazing, though, that a lot of people might not think or know about is going to be their tongues. Their tongues can be about 20 inches long, and they are prehensile, meaning they can use them to wrap around the leaves to pull them out of the trees and into their mouths. Now, it looks like all the giraffe that we're seeing over here are going to be Maasai giraffe. And we can actually tell the difference between the giraffe species based on their spot patterns. But they don't always have the same height advantage to help them get that food. What they can do instead is they do have their strength to help them bulldoze the trees and get the leaves down that way. Now once the elephants are able to reach their food, they can use their trunks a lot like how we use our hands to help them pick it up. They can also use it to pick up their water. A lot of times we do the elephants, since they've been on the reserve, so they actually don't really like the sound of bees. But we've been able to kind of use that to our advantage and also use it to help farmers that were having trouble with elephant herds destroying their crops. The farmers were then able to build beehive fences, which gave them a safe way to protect their crops from the elephants. It also then gave them an additional source of income because it meant that they could harvest and sell the honey inside. Now if you keep looking on the left-hand side here, there is a flock of greater flamingo on this island. Now the flamingo might not look as pink as what we usually imagine flamingos look like. That's because the greater flamingo is actually the lightest shade of pink out of any of the flamingo species. When they first hatch though, they do hatch gray with black legs, and they don't start to get their pink coloring until they're about a year old. When they do start to turn pink, it's also not something that they do entirely on their own. They do have a little bit of help because they actually get all their pink coloring from all the shrimp that they eat. They can withstand the weight of a person standing on top of them before they'll start to crack. Now, even though the ostrich is the largest species of bird, they actually can't fly, but they do use their wings to change directions while they run. They can run. Rhino that we're seeing up ahead here. And even though they're a little bit muddy and wet, you can probably tell they don't really get their name from the color of their skin. They're definitely more of a brownish gray color and not really a white. That's because the name white rhino is actually a mistranslation. Their original name in Afrikaans was white rhino with a V. And we found out a little bit too late that white does not actually mean white. It does actually mean wide. And that's a reference to the shapes of their mouths because they have very square, wide-set jaws. Now the white rhino can also weigh about 4,000 to 5,000 pounds. And even though they get that big, they can also still charge at about 35 miles an hour. Rhinos are still also unfortunately popular targets for poaching. And we're not entirely sure why. We do know that their horns are in high demand on the black market. But their horns are not made out of ivory like the elephant tusks.